It's just preparing. Anna, it says video unavailable. This video has been removed by the uploader.
Okay, hang on. We'll need to get Lydia. We'll need to go live.
They might have to start at their end. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. Right. I'm just going to go back onto that. I'm going to go back to share, and then we're just going to get kick-started, right?
Yeah.
Share. Slideshow. We are ready to go. Ready?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Wag Wellness. We'll just give it a moment or two just to let everybody join. If you want to, whilst we are waiting, you can feel free to pop into the comments box. You can pop in your name, your dog's name, what type of dog you've got. Do introduce yourselves. We do love to know who we've got here today. I'll just give it a couple more moments just because I can see lots of people just joining us. So yeah, welcome. Brilliant. I can still see people coming. So as I was saying, if you would like to introduce yourself, do feel free just to pop into that comments box there, and let us know who we've got. Tell us your dog's name, tell us their breed. We do love to know who's here with us today. Just going to make sure that that's working for everybody. Brilliant. Should be ready to rock and roll now, guys. If you want to do introduce yourself. Fantastic. Brilliant. We'll get started. And then anybody who joins can just go with the flow. Perfect. So, hello and welcome to our Wag Wellness session. So my name's Rachel, and I will be your host today. I am one of the in-house vet nurses here at Butternut Box and have been part of the team now for around 3.5 years. I've been a registered veterinary nurse for 12 years now, and I love nothing more than supporting our customers and their pooches here at Butternut Box. Our vet nurse team is a team of 4, and today I am also joined by Anna, Leah and Lucy, who are also veterinary nurses here at Butternut Box too. If you ever do book an appointment or email through, it will be one of us here today who will support you and your dogs. Between us, we've got years of knowledge and experience that we've all sort of gained from a broad range of practices that we've worked in previously. We are all dog lovers too, and we all have our own dogs at home. It is important to know that we are all qualified veterinary nurses, but we're not canine behaviouralists. However, when undertaking our qualification, we have undergone training in behaviour too. So let's see what we're going to get up to today. So this month's webinar, we are deep diving in how heat can affect our dogs. It can affect them in all different ways. We'll begin by looking at summer survival and stress, and then from there we'll head into fussy eating and how the heat can affect our dog's appetites. And then finally we'll take a little look at summer health, summer first aid tips, that kind of thing. We'll do a few polls along the way, and we'll have lots of question and answer time at the end. Please make use of the question and answer box that's at the bottom of the screen, and we'll run through them once the girls have finished talking. There's also a chat box at the bottom of the screen. So as I already mentioned, do feel free to introduce yourselves. Let us know your dog's name, their breed, who we've got here today. And yeah, just introduce yourselves. That's really nice. So to get us started, we thought that we could have a little look at myth busting on heat and our dogs. Please pop whether you think the answer is true or false into the chat box. Don't worry if you're not sure. Just have a go. It's not a test. So let's have a little look, see what our first one is. I'm just going to get the chat box up just so that I can see you all. Perfect. So the first one. Giving ice cubes to a hot dog is dangerous and can cause bloating or shock. Is this true or false? Let's see what people think. We've got a mixture of answers coming in actually. Lots of false. Any more for any more? Yeah, nice. I think there's a range, but lots of falses coming through. Anybody else? Brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah. So the answer is actually false. So ice cubes are safe to give a hot dog or in hot weather. It doesn't cause bloat or thermal shock. Offering ice cubes is actually a way to slowly cool them down, especially if you can get them to lick at it. So whether that's like a licky mat popped into the freezer that they can just sort of slowly lick at, that's a really good way of getting our dogs to cool down. Let's have a little look, see what the next one is. So only old or sick dogs are at risk in the heat. Is this true or is this false? Let's see what we get through. Yeah, lots of falses coming through. Any more? False, false, false. Yeah, lots of falses. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So any dog is at risk of heat stroke. Young and healthy dogs, active dogs, they are still at risk as well in the hot weather. Puppies, overweight dogs, certain breeds, such as the ones with the squash faces, so that's what we call brachycephalics, they're especially vulnerable. So if you do have those kinds of like the squished face dogs, so boxers, bulldogs, that kind, do just be extra, extra careful in the heat. Let's have a little look at the next one. Dogs know when they're too hot and will stop playing. So do they stop playing when they're too hot? What do we think? Yeah, there's different multiple range actually of trues and falses coming through. Um, perfect. Yeah, some people saying that theirs doesn't. Um, some people saying that it's true, except puppies, they maybe don't know. Fantastic. So the actual answer is false. So many dogs cannot regulate during play and can overheat without showing clear signs till it's really serious. So always watch your dogs, especially when it's really hot and they are playing, because sometimes they just don't know when to stop. I know my dogs wouldn't. It can escalate quite quickly on how hot they get. So just keep a close eye on them and try and keep them cool. Brilliant. Last one before we get deep dive into all the information. So leaving the window open is enough if you leave your dog in the car. Is this true or is this false? Lots of false. Yeah, pretty good. In fact, it's really good that I'm seeing a lot of false coming through and people saying never, no, don't do it. Yeah, you're absolutely right, guys. So even with the windows cracked open, the inside temperature of a car can get dangerously hot within minutes. So please do not ever, even if it's just for a minute or two, do not leave your dogs in hot cars because it can kill. Okay, brilliant. Fantastic. So next we are going to pass over to Anna, and Anna is going to speak to us all about summer survival and stress.
Thank you, Rachel. And it's great to have you all here today. It's always a really important part for us to be able to chat to you all and hopefully lead a really strong session that lets you take away some little bits and pieces and then a good question and answer at the end. And also a hugely important topic for today. So today's topic is all about helping our dogs cope, and this is from a behavioural and an emotional side through the heat of summer. And we've had a particularly hot summer so far, so hopefully some nice relevant tips. Summer is and should be framed as fun. It's an outdoorsy time for our dogs. It brings long days, lots of really good smells, more walks, hopefully lots more trips, longer days. And for a lot of our dogs, it's also that chance to either go on a staycation, potentially if owners are away, or to actually go on holidays as well with owners. But it can also be really quite different. You can be balancing heat, overstimulation, a disruption to routines, regardless if this is puppy through to our older dogs, and of course, busy environments. And this can make it quite a challenging season, again, for us as pet parents, but also for our dogs. And it can affect behaviour and well-being. And I think to dive into it, I completely get it. I work full time. I'm lucky I can work from home. But it is a busy house. It's summer holidays for us. We've got an array of pets, including 3 dogs, but they are 3 very different dogs. So, an 11-month-old terrier who is in the height of the teenage, rebellious but cute stage. She's a bit wild. She's very curious. She's pushing the kind of boundaries. Um, then we have a very driven, kind of 2.5-year-old working Labrador who is the epitome of a dog that needs mental stimulation in bucket loads, and an 8-year-old failed guide dog with Addison's disease who is recovering from a vestibular episode and really wants, left alone, to have a quiet walk, to not be run over by the kids, or to have that kind of loud environment. And he's also a black Labrador with a very, very thick, dense coat. So they all need exercise, they all need stimulation, but they are affected by heat in different ways and their needs are different. So hopefully today is going to be a little bit about some tips and leaving you with maybe 1 or 2 things to take away that you can build into your routine. So we're going to look at how heat affects dogs' behaviour. We're going to look at stress and kind of overstimulation in summer, how to maybe adapt to that exercise and play when it's too hot to walk. And again, maybe a little summer challenge for you all to take away and bring just one little thing back into your dog's routine. So heat and behaviour. It's the best place to start because it can have a big impact on your dog's behaviour. And sometimes it can be really subtle that we might not even notice it. But just to call out, the average temperature for a dog is 38.3 to 39.2 degrees Celsius. And this is higher than ours. So what feels warm to us is going to feel even hotter to our dogs. And calling out certain breeds, as Rach mentioned, the breed, the body type, can be more sensitive. Our brachycephalics, like our Frenchies, and our double-coateds, like our kind of collies, but also even our small dogs. They can retain heat more. They've got less of a kind of body split to be able to get rid of heat. So again, they can retain heat more than that of, say, our bigger Great Dane. And it's not just physical discomfort that we notice or we might find when it's hot, but it's also mood and those little cues in behavior. So one thing that we might see is grumpiness, or we might find they're maybe a little bit more less tolerant around people. Maybe they don't want to be around the kids, or they're taking themselves off when they're on a walk. Seeking isolation or potentially withdrawing from routines, and even restlessness. So you might find that your routine's changed and you're questioning why your suddenly settled dog is unsettled at night, or doing laps, or not wanting to sit in the living room with you and is taking them off outside, or a little bit frustrated through the day. So a good example is my Labrador thrives on mental challenges. When she doesn't get that outlet, she does become tense. She starts to fixate a little bit. And our terrier can start barking and ultimately looking at things to chew if we're not giving that calm activity and that kind of release. And our older boy just takes himself away. He wants quiet. So if something seems off, never dismiss it. Heat definitely plays a big role. So with this and with heat, we can also find sensory overload. So there are noisy parks, there are barbecue smells, there are new weekend plans, there's fireworks, visitors, school holidays, and our dogs have a limit. So stress signals to watch out for are panting, even if it's not hot. You can get yawning, lip licking, turning away, sudden changes, or hiding. You might find they become overexcited, or that chaos of the zoomies looks more like frustration. So looking at potentially changes in behavior, how they behave with toys, if they get a little bit more mouthy or shut down, this is when we need to step in and reset. And there's some really simple things you can bring in that can help. So creating a space of calm, somewhere they can retreat to when there's a bit of chaos. A white noise or a gentle background sound can help. Really clear boundaries with guests. So particularly children, or if you're having a lot of visitors come and go, this is ultimately your companion, your dog. Set those boundaries. Intentional quiet time. So bringing in licky mats, chews, doing less. But what about kind of exercising? So we can set up safe spaces, we can balance overstimulation. But exercise is a big one because we know dogs like it. We like it. We want that routine. But the what is just as important as the how. So when is it too hot to walk? Generally, anything over 20 degrees is too risky, especially if it's really sunny or high humidity. And do the pavement test. So hold your hand on the pavement for 5 seconds. If it is too hot for you, it is too hot for pause. I like early morning sniff walks, potters in the garden in the evening. And for our terrier who is needing that kind of drive away from chewing and barking, we look at short games. We go back to training and short bursts of fun. And if you have a dog that maybe doesn't like cooling mats, that's okay too. There's lots of things in the heat that you can bring in. You can create a shaded area inside or near a fan. You can use dry, cool things like cool towels or a pillowcase or freeze toys or chews for that long-lasting enrichment. But remember, if your dog doesn't need miles, they need mental stimulation, variety, and a real purpose. So a short game of, say, 5 minutes of trick training or DIY sniffy trail inside can be just as satisfying as that long walk that we think they really want. So ultimately, we need calm, confidence, and a little bit of change. So summer brings an opportunity, long days, that wonderful time with you all, the chance to have fun. But it can bring, as we discussed, that overload, the heat stress, behavioural shifts. So tune into what your dog's telling you. Create cool, calm space, mix up enrichment with focus and routine. And for one little summer mini challenge, I challenge you all to pick one thing each week and see how your dog responds. So it could be teach a new trick or a cue, no matter how young or how old they are. It could be settle, find, learning touch. Design a chilled Sunday routine. So a slow morning, a frozen treat, an evening potter, something different. Or create that kind of holiday moment. Set up an interesting licky mat or create the paddling pool outside. And my absolute favourite is a scent trail. So this can be in the house or in the garden. We call it like a foraging walk. These can be really short-lived, but a really good chance for your dog to get out and take time to sniff and smell. So small changes make big differences to mood and behaviour. I am passing back now to Rach for another poll and then a chance to dive into fussy eating. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna, for all that great information. I'm just going to say, just before we move on to a poll, I can see lots of questions coming through in the comments box. So if you could please pop them into the question answer box because we don't want to lose them because there's lots of comments coming through. So just to make sure that we do pick up your questions that you are asking, please just pop them over into the question and answer box. So we're going to have a quick poll. Unfortunately, the box doesn't seem to be coming up when I'm clicking on it, but don't worry. What we'll do instead is we'll use the comments box and do a little poll in there instead and see what we get come through. So the first thing we want to know is when it gets too hot, so the weather's hot outside, what does your dog's appetite turn into? Do they go off their food? Does it not change at all? Some dogs it doesn't. Do they become more hungry? How does your dog sort of react to the heat? Let us know in the comments box. It's got quite a few coming through saying that they go quite fussy. Yeah, goes off the food, doesn't eat much. I suppose they're a bit like us, aren't they? Like, I know I don't really like to eat a lot when it gets quite hot, and they're just the same, aren't they? Yeah, office food. Some no change. I know Anna was mentioning earlier that her dogs don't really change when it comes to heat. Yeah, my dog goes off the food when away from home. Yeah, fussy. Brilliant. Yeah, lots of fussy eaters, which lines us up perfectly for our next part. So next we are going to be moving to our lovely Leah. Leah is going to be talking to us all about fussy eating. She's going to give us some tips and tricks. So yeah, listen up, guys, for all those that have got those fussy dogs. So passing over to Leah.
Lovely. Thanks, Rachel. And it's lovely to see so many of you here and learning about your dogs and their eating and how this affects them during the heat as well. I think it's really difficult because it's something that we can't control. Whether we can't control, we can control a lot of things, but that's not a thing that we can. So it's really important how we can support them and how we can change things to adapt and look at supporting them health-wise. So we know with weather changes, with the heat, we can see that they become more lethargic than usual. They do go off their food, they might not want to sort of play or exercise as much, and it can almost seem like their personality is changing that time. It's also important to note that we can see a lot of these symptoms with health issues and with underlying health concerns as well. And it's about knowing your dog. So we know, for example, a dog that is due to come into season, if they're not neutered, they can also drop appetite. They can become lethargic. They can be a bit more particular with toys. So is your dog due a season, or is it, that they're coming up to 6 months and they are going to be coming into season over the next few months? Also, if we have got a more mature boy or girl and they have had health conditions as well, just being aware of reoccurring symptoms. And if we do see things like sickness or diarrhea, coughing, or other unusual signs that we might not see with things like heat, like I say, all the lethargicness, the inappetence, things like that, then we definitely be wanting to raise it with your vets as well. So let's dive into sort of how we can support with their eating, because ultimately we want to keep those energy levels up. We want to be making sure that we're replenishing their bodies to make sure that they're in the best possible conditions during these hot times as well. So first of all, broth. We know hydration is key. Essentially, it's one of the main components we want to be making sure we're keeping on top of during these hotter times. But broth is a really good source of that hydration. It has a good level of things like electrolytes, but also collagen for your dogs that are a little bit on the mature side. They might have things like arthritis, for skin support as well. So a really nice sort of factor that we can use just in overall nutrition as well as that hydration. So lots of different ways we can explore this. So we can sort of just pour it into a bowl and let your dog lap it up, enjoy it as sort of a little refreshment drink alongside sort of readily available water dotted around the house, lots of different bowls. If you're finding that your dog is struggling to drink or not wanting to drink as much or getting up for those drinks, looking into something like a doggy water fountain where you've got that free flow running water, that can just make things look a little bit more interesting and encourage them to go for that drink as well. We can also make it a little bit more exciting, so we can turn that broth into almost like an ice lolly. So if you have got some ice lolly molds at home, you can pour some of the broth in there, pop it in the freezer, and away they go. Bring it out when you're having your ice lolly, get it out, and then they're involved in that fun as well. Other things, obviously, we now know that ice cubes are safe, and as long as you're choosing the appropriate size ice cube for your dog to avoid things like choking, so making sure that you've got the right size for them in terms of those molds, you can even pour some into some ice cube molds or make it a little bit more interesting, popping some little fruit in there, things like blueberries, strawberries, and then they've got to sort of lick away at that ice cube to get away at the fruity bits as well. So lots of different ways with broth that you can utilize it and changing the texture of food itself. So pouring it into food as well to make it a little bit more moisture dense if you want to add it to meals. And then moving on, like a lot of you have said, I've had a look in the comments, and they don't like eating until later on, sort of late at night, and they might not want to eat during the day. They might only want one meal. They might not be eating as much, and that all sort of plays a part into sort of that heat and sort of becoming a little bit more tireder than usual. They're using more sort of energy in their body to sort of regulate that temperature and maintain that temperature. So little and often meals is great for these situations. So offering sort of 3 to 4 smaller portions a day is perfect for these dogs that are experiencing these things that you are seeing. So what we usually suggest is just popping it down for 20 minutes. It means that there's still that excitement around it. There's sort of, no worry about it being left there for longer. And also we know food can heat up in hotter temperatures as well. So we want to sort of leave it down for 20 minutes. The little and often feeding can be good just so that their tummies can manage those smaller portions and they just don't look as daunting by giving them larger portions as well. Now, we do find in these situations that variety is key. So it can be really tricky in these times because your dog's routine can completely change or have a 360, especially if your dogs thrive on routine as well. So they do like going for a walk at this time in the morning. They have so much time on a walk. That's not always possible when we have got the hot temperatures. We might have to sort of stay indoors. We might not be able to play in the garden. And so for some dogs that are particularly anxious, they can really struggle with that change. And I think sometimes it's just about going with that change as well. So in terms of what you can do is change up the location in the house which they normally feed. So if they normally have in the kitchen, definitely change into like the living room or the hallway, or if you have got a really nice shady garden or a sort of an area where it doesn't get a lot of sun, popping it there so you can both enjoy some food out in the sort of shaded areas there as well. Looking at sort of perceiving that area is different as well. So some dogs, if they are a little bit anxious, having that little bit of comfort support, like a little sort of mat under their dinner, just so they can stand on it and have sort of that level of comfort, can be quite good. And also sort of looking at what you feed out of as well. We do find that dogs that are struggling to eat, especially in the hotter weather, they do better on sort of flatter surfaces. So things like a saucer, a baking tray, a chopping board, if you've got those sort of things, utilizing them and changing it up from meal to meal so it looks more exciting. It's something new, something different to be able to use those things. And then looking at different textures as well. So looking at different ways of serving butternut. So we've obviously gone over broths, but we can sort of, roll butternut up into little meatball shapes, pop it on that baking tray. So it's a little bit different, a little bit more exciting. Or you can even sort of blend it with some bone broth. So it's almost like a pate and spreading it across a licky mat and even sort of, popping that in the fridge for a little bit, just so it is on the colder side. That's something that you can do. So definitely using sort of that variety to your advantage and using the selection of the recipes so you can alternate for that sort of change. And knowing that obviously routine can be quite a structure in some dogs' life as we've spoke about. So giving that reassurance, if they have eaten or they've made some sort of conscious effort with the food, make a big deal out of it. Well done, lots of praise, and give them a treat so that they know during this hotter time eating is a good thing, and we're sort of cementing that good relationship with food as well. So lots of different things, and if your dogs do particularly struggle, or even if you're just struggling with your dogs eating in general without the hot weather, we will have some links and support that you can use, which I will just pop a link into the chat box. So feel free to have a look at that with some tips of how you can get them eating, and there is lots of advice there for you as well. So I will hand back over to Rachel.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it, when they're fussy eaters? So hopefully, lots of tips and tricks you can sort of take away. And yeah, I sort of want to echo on what Leah said about the help centre as well. There's some great articles on there, and it really deep dives as well into why our dogs are fussy in the first place. So yeah, definitely worth a read. So we'll have another little poll, but comment poll. So pop your answers into the comments box again. So this time I want to know if you have a first aid kit for your dog when you're out and about, and if you do, what types of things would you say is like a must have? So what kinds of things do you have in your first aid kit for your dog? Let us know in the comments box. So it could be things like bandages, saline to wash out if there's any cuts, tick removers, that kind of thing. Oh, someone's just bought a ready-made one, so that'd be interesting to see where that was from. Was it from like a pet store or something like that? Yeah, tick removers are coming up. Let's have a little look. Don't have one but want to make one. Yeah, brilliant. Piriton, yeah, really great if we do get sort of stung or something like that. Don't have one. Bandages, splint, tick removers, antihistamines. Yeah. Lana's saying that Rocky can be terrible with his food with fussy eating. So hopefully you've taken away some of the advice there that Leah's just gave. Yeah, lots of small scissors. Tick removers seems to be a really common one. Brilliant. Fab. So next we are going to move on to Lucy, and Lucy is going to talk to us all about summer health tips and tricks and first aid kits too. So for all of you guys that's saying that you don't have a first aid kit but you want to make one, Lucy's gonna chat to us about that.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So yeah, summer brings those longer walks and plenty of adventures. But with the sunshine comes a few hazards, and we just need to be aware of them. So we're going to explore some this afternoon. We'll be looking at heat stroke, grass seeds, water safety, and also bee and wasp stings. So as the weather warms up, where I am, it's very hot at the moment. It's only natural to want to go and get outside with our pups. But while we love the sunshine, hotter temperatures may be a risk for our pups, particularly when it comes to heat stroke. So any and all dogs can suffer from heat stroke. However, we do have some that are more vulnerable than others. So first up, we've got our puppies and then also our senior dogs. Now, young and older dogs do struggle more to regulate their temperature, particularly with our senior dogs. They can struggle more as they age. And this is because their sweat gland function decreases, which makes panting and other cooling mechanisms less effective. And it's also important to note that that senior status does depend on the size of our dogs. So typically speaking, for our smaller breeds, it's at around 10 to 12 years. For our medium breeds, 8 to 10 years. For our larger breeds, 8 years. And for our giant breeds, we're looking at 6 years when they become seniors. Now, you've also got your overweight dogs, so that extra body fat makes it harder for them to lose heat. You've also got your giant breeds, so the larger bodies means that heat escapes more slowly. And also we've got our brachycephalic breeds, so our flat-faced breeds like our bulldogs and our pugs. We know they've got a restricted airway, which makes panting harder for them. So we do have to give them a little bit more caution. And also you've got dogs with health conditions, so particularly those with heart or respiratory issues. We do want to be, just keeping an eye on them, making sure they are out the heat. And then also our slim-coated dogs like our greyhounds. So we know that fat plays a role in helping dogs regulate their temperature. So we know that too much is also a challenge, but it also works in the same way that too little also doesn't help. So a bit like Anna mentioned, when we think about temperature, the ideal temperature to walk your dogs is around that 12 to 15 degrees. And anything up to around 19 degrees is generally considered safe. However, for those dogs in those at-risk categories, we will be erring on the side of caution. And then once the temperature hits to 20 degrees and above, it's time to start thinking about changing those plans. So avoiding those midday walks, seeking out the shade more, and also thinking of ways to keep them cool at home. So we're going to look into heat stroke a little bit more. It doesn't happen all at once. It does build in stages, and spotting the signs early can make all the difference. So the first stage that we've got is heat stress. So when we think of heat stress, we might see them panting a little bit more with that nice sort of open smile. Their gums and tongue may appear a brighter red colour, and this is due to the process of vasodilation and increased blood flow to the tongue and their gums as part of their cooling mechanism. So when dogs get hot, their body increases the blood flow to the surface of their tongue and their gums, and as moisture evaporates from their tongue and mouth, it carries the heat away and helps them to regulate their temperature. We can also see in the summer months, the tongue starts to hang out more than usual. And this is actually to increase the surface area and to aid in that evaporation. We then move on to stage 2, which is heat exhaustion. So you'll see all the symptoms of heat stress, but you may start to see lethargy and that wobbliness, which is known as ataxia. They may start to drool more than usual, and we may see vomiting and diarrhea. And then that's when we move into the final stage, which is heat stroke. So this is when we may see the gums, that blue grayish colour. Our dogs may collapse, they may have seizures, and also we may see, again, vomiting and diarrhea, but this time we may see blood with it. So it's important to note that in any of these stages, cooling your dog down is essential, and we always recommend doing this before heading to the vet. So we want to move them to a shaded area, and we want to run water all over their body, especially focusing on the belly, the paws, because these areas have major blood vessels close to the skin, so it helps disperse the heat faster. You can use a fan, even better if you put a bowl of ice in front of the fan, We really want to be circulating that air. And you can offer them water, if tolerated. What we don't want to be doing is covering them in wet towels. So this actually traps the heat and it almost gives that wetsuit effect. So unlike us and other animals, dogs don't have sweat glands all over their body. They only sweat through their paw pads and their nose, which makes panting their primary way to cool down. So as your dog pants, saliva evaporates and helps lower their temperature. Now this does become far less effective when it's very hot and also when the air is humid. So dogs with flatter faces also struggle to cool through panting, so the risk is even higher for them. You can also support your dog's natural cooling mechanisms with some simple changes during the summer months. We touched on some above, but you can place some cold water on their paws and their belly area, providing those shaded areas, using cooling mats. However, we really want to be making sure we're checking them regularly for any damage. And also, if our pups lay on them for a long period of time, they can in fact start to heat up. So just regularly checking to make sure they're doing the job properly. Lots of water bowls throughout the house. You can use licky mats, as Leah mentioned, offering them dog safe ice cream. And again, using those bone broths and making them into ice lollies. Another thing to keep in mind is acclimatization. So you may be thinking, how come dogs in hotter climates cope with the heat? And that is because they adjust over time. So in the UK, our weather is constantly changing, and it doesn't give our dogs that chance to adapt. So acclimatization takes up to 8 weeks. So it's definitely something to think about when, one day it's cloudy and then the next day we're in a heat wave. Our dogs just don't have that time to adjust to the heat. And finally, don't forget sun protection. So for our dogs with pink noses or sparse fur, they are more prone to sunburn, and you can use pet safe sun cream like Dermacent or Filterback. We never want to be applying human sun cream because it does contain an ingredient which is toxic to dogs. And also, if your dog has blue eyes or they suffer with any eye condition like cataracts, for example, the goggles can be a surprisingly handy accessory for the summer, and they should be used if your dog does struggle with their eyes. Then we're going to move on to bee and wasp stings. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing wasps everywhere at the moment. They just keep coming, and they can sting our dogs. And what we want to do is we just want to remain calm and take a look at the area and help them. So for bee stings, they do leave their stinger. So you can gently scrape the sting out using a credit card. We don't want to be using tweezers, as squeezing the sting can release more venom. And that's not what we want to do. You can then apply a paste of bicarbonate of soda. This actually helps neutralize the sting. And for wasp stings, they don't leave their stinger, but what you can do is dab the area with a little bit of vinegar. It helps counteract the wasp's alkaline venom. And then if your dog has been stung, you will just want to be keeping out for any signs of allergic reactions. So any swelling around the face, the throat, any hives on their skin. If you notice any difficulty in breathing or they may start to vomit, that's when we want to be calling our vet immediately. And we've got grass seeds. So grass seeds may be tiny, but they can cause a big problem for our dogs, especially during these months. Their arrow-like shape means that they can easily work their way into paws, ears, eyes, and under the skin. And often they aren't noticed straight away. So after walks, especially in those areas with long grass or woodlands, it's good to give your dog a quick check over, focusing on those in between the paws, the ears, the eyes. They're the common places that they like to hide. And if you do spot some on your dog's coat, you can gently remove it as long as they're sitting loosely. If the grass seed has started to embed, then or your dog seems uncomfortable, you may notice them licking their paw a lot, really focusing on one area. That's when it's the best time to just reach out to your vet because they can travel deeper into the body. So getting your vet just to check it out, to remove it, is the best way to go here. You can help prevent grass seeds. So like I said, inspecting your dog's coat after every walk, removing those loose visible seeds. Keep the hair trimmed around your dog's ears and your paws to make it harder for them to latch on. And try avoid walking in those long grass, areas, especially when they are at their peak, which seems to be at the moment because they're everywhere where I am. And then finally, we've got water safety. So swimming can be a brilliant way to keep your dog cool in the summer, but we want to make sure they're safe whilst they're splashing about. Good swimming spots can be sort of calm lakes with shallow areas, dog-friendly beaches. Just always check the tide and the flags before letting them in. Those shallow, slow-moving rivers and paddling pools, they're perfect for in the garden, especially in the summer holidays like I'm in. My kids are in there, my puppy's in there, everyone's in the paddling pool. And those places to avoid, we really want to be avoiding canals, reservoirs, fast-moving rivers, and rough seas. We also want to look out for blue-green algae. So this is toxic for our dogs and it's often found in still water. It has a greenish film that sits on the surface. So we want to be avoiding this completely. And if you do think your dog has been in a water which does have blue-green algae, then it's always best to contact your vet. And after any swim, it's always good just to give them a quick rinse, just to make sure if there's anything on their coat, it's safely been washed off. But that's all from me, and I'll pass back to Rachel.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, some really, really great information in there. So hopefully lots of people have learned something new. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to Anna, Leah and Lucy for all that great information. I think lots of invaluable sort of information has been given. So we hope you've learned something new and you've got something that you can take away. Let's see what questions have come through. As we've already sort of mentioned, just pop any questions you do have into the question and answer box, just because we might lose them in the comments section. So do feel free to pop anything through. I'm going to kickstart with Ian's question, and I know it's going off a little bit of topic, but Anna is one of our gut pros, so I just want to bring this one up with Anna first, if that's okay. Do Butternut produce feed options for dogs with specific dietary requirements, in particular gastro issues, recent colonitis diagnosis in vet suggesting Hill's ID? Could you give some advice in relation to sort of like sensitive tummies and things, Anna?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the key thing, Ian, is very happy to work with you, often with something like this or a particular diagnosis. There's never like a really clear-cut answer of like one thing fits or a specific diet that works for one dog won't for the next, or vice versa. And I think the key is often creating like a plan, potentially working with yourself and potentially working with your vet to find the best solution. And any dog food company, even outside Butternut, should certainly be happy to do that. So there can be lots of different requirements with something like this, but the kind of key thing, particularly around gastro issues or your recent diagnosis, is finding a diet that is really highly digestible. So we want to select something that has all of the nutrition our dogs need, but ultimately is going to be as easy as possible for them to break it down. So if that dog needs something that avoids a particular protein or something quite specific, working with you to find out what that is and your vets, highly digestible, easy access to nutrients. So again, that digestive system isn't having to work too much or expand too much effort into breaking it down. We want to remove like any irritation that's there or upset that's there, just simplifying it completely. And something like butternut can work really well. One, there's lots of protein choices, so you can pick between proteins. Fat, again, can be quite a trigger for some dogs, so we can pick between fats and look at fat content. Also, sometimes feeding routine can come into it. Some dogs that maybe do have a specific sensitivity or they need to balance a diagnosis. Sometimes looking at how they're fed, whether it's time of day and frequency. Again, the size of a meal can really help. We do find a lot of times with sensitive guts, the more the guts are fed, the happier they are because they're in a kind of steady stream as opposed to suddenly panically kind of going into work, breaking down a big meal and becoming a little bit overexcited. And that can sit really well with something like this. And again, just looking at what fits best. We always recommend following your vet's advice first and foremost. So if they are recommending something like ID, there can be a specific reason. And that's not to say other meals or butternut isn't suitable, but it would be kind of in conjunction with your vet to make sure it is the perfect fit. So it's a long-winded answer, Ian, that we are here and happy to look at support, maybe catch up with you and kind of chat things through and get a kind of plan of action in place. But again, very much in line with vets' recommendation support, but highly digestible, something that's easy to break down. You can mix between those proteins, is definitely the first and foremost place you want to kind of start. But yeah, very happy to catch up if that helps.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well, we do have, if you pop onto your app or onto your account, you can book appointments with the vet nurses. They're free of charge, and we call you basically. So yeah, if you do have any sort of questions and you would want more of a personal answer, feel free to obviously book in via the link on the app with one of us nurses. Brilliant. So next I'm going to move on to a fussy eating one, and this one's going to be for Leah, if that's okay, Leah. Leah is our fussy queen here at Butternut. So my puppy seems to be going off certain ingredients. For example, he'll eat lamb, beef, but seems to have gone off turkey, chicken and salmon. I know this is quite common, isn't it, when we say fussy eaters, Leah? Is this normal? He also will only eat it once it's warmed up too. Leah, can you give some advice for Natasha? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think when it comes to sort of fussy eating and sort of changes in appetite, the first thing we want to do is pinpoint why they're doing that. So looking at what's the reason behind their sort of eating habits, for us to be able to tailor their sort of support and their tips. So here it very much does sound like we are seeing a level of what we call habituation, which is just a long word for boredom. So it's boredom associated with food. We see it quite commonly in our sort of younger dogs that have learnt the world and now they're sort of wondering what else there is. So lots of clever sort of stimulated dogs as well can get the habituation because they're always looking for something new and different. So essentially what we want to do with that habituation, when you start to see that they're enjoying one and then they suddenly go off it and then they're enjoying another one and they're going off it, we want to sort of change the whole concept of that eating to keep it interesting. So looking at the different ways of changing it, because we can't always change the food or the recipes when you have got a selection, but looking at how they're perceived. So definitely it's going back to sort of, the different textures. So one meal you might want to roll it into meatballs, the next you might want to add the broth. And using play to your advantage as well to bring that excitement back into eating rather than that boredom. So using things like snuffle mats, what I do is sort of use a snuffle mat and then chop the butternut up into little cubes and pop them in that snuffle mat and then just making sure that you're washing it afterwards so that they've got that sort of brain activity going. You can even stuff it in a Kong ball. So food doesn't always have to be served in the generic way like a plate or a bowl. You can use Kongs, licky mats, snuffle mats, and use sort of things like meatballs, stuffing a treat in some of them so they've got to eat the meatball to get to the treat, and almost like it's a reward system. So definitely having sort of that change and changing what you're feeding out of. A lot of dogs that do develop habituation, like I say, tend to do better on flatter surfaces. So you might have found before that, eating directly off the floor, they absolutely love it. And we can't always do that, but getting something like a little rubber mat, popping it on the floor and just feeding them from the rubber mat and having sort of that change as well. So certainly sort of it's about that change. If your dog is getting bored of one recipe, then another recipe, and then you're finding that you're limited options, but also bringing 2 pouches out and defrosting them at the same time. Once our meals are open, they can stay safely in the fridge for up to 2 days. So you can sort of use one recipe for one meal and one recipe for the next meal. So it's not all one recipe in one day. And I hope that helps. We can deep dive into it a lot more. So feel free to book an appointment and the details will be at the end if you want to sort of have that one-on-one support as well. But I hope that helps.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, really, really great tips there. I always find as well that mixing 2 recipes together, creating a completely new sort of taste can also help just keep things sort of fresh. But yeah, fantastic. Next, I'm gonna move to our Lucy, and I'm gonna ask Lucy. A few people have asked actually about these cooling jackets, and obviously I know that you touch base on these kinds of things in the presentation. But people have said a cooling jacket's a good idea. Molly loves hers. What was said about the wet towel thing? I use one of those cooling jacket things that you wet. Is that the same principle? Are they safe? Like, how would you say to go around with these cooling jackets? What do you advise, Luce?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very hard because there's lots and lots of different products out there. And you can go online and all of a sudden there's loads. Yes, generally cooling jackets, they are safe. They're safe. It's the timing when to use them. If you're out and you've been out for a walk first thing in the morning, you come back, you can pop them on and they work really well. Not They won't be suitable for all dogs. You may find some dogs don't like them. Um, but I think really it is down to personal preference. And with the wet towels, they almost suck to them because they are damp, whereas cooling jackets work in a different way to the wet towel. So definitely they are safe. It's just about finding the right one for you and your dog.
Yeah, I suppose as well, if you are going to be using one where you are wetting it, just keeping a check that it is still cool and not doing the opposite. Yeah, really great. Thanks, Lucy, for answering that there. Somebody asked, I can't find it now. Somebody did ask about their puppy. So Gatsby is also not eating because of teething. Will these tips mentioned in this webinar also help? So yeah, absolutely. You can use all of these tips that will sort of help with when they do go off their food, because we don't want to sort of promote that fussy eating behaviour. But as well, helping with teething, you can give things like frozen carrots is a really good one for them to chew on. You could make little ice lollies out of broths, for example. So we've got the bone broths. So bone broths basically is it's like stock, I suppose. So the bones are sort of boiled and all the goodness is taken out of them. And yeah, and you can use it as a gravy, I suppose, as well for those fussy eaters. But yeah, you can, as getting them to be pain-free in their mouth, just giving things that, same as a baby, I suppose, giving them things to chew on. And yeah, cold carrots and ice lollies and that kind of thing, ice cubes can really, really help there too. Perfect. So we're going to move on. I'm going to ask Anna this question, if that's okay, Anna. So my dog has been eating grass nearly every day since being on Butternut. Is this due to the heat or the food not agreeing with him? This is our 5th week. Not being sick, just eating the grass. Can we give some advice, Anna? Because I know this question comes up quite a lot, so it'd be really great to answer it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first call out is it would be interesting to know what age your dog is as well. Just out of interest, but as Rachel says, it does come up a lot. And a kind of call out is it varies between my dogs, but I have one dog in particular that is absolutely grass obsessed. And I would say he's slightly outside the normal. The other two will eat grass depending on the grass. So a lot of the time it's a very natural behaviour. A lot of this is quite common. And the reason I asked what age your dog is it depends on the time of year. Grass is quite tasty just now. It aids a kind of plant material. It adds a little bit of fibre. It tastes nice and it's got quite a nice texture. Ace. Okay, so this is quite new. In terms of digestion, again, potentially depending on previous food and the swap to butternut, it can aid digestion. And again, that's not in any way a kind of negative. It can really help just kind of settle things if there has been a change, or if you've gone maybe say from a kibble to fresh. For us, it's like moving from a diet that maybe does involve a little bit more work to something that is very clean, easy, and highly digestible. But for a lot of dogs, particularly maybe if around kind of 9, that can just take a little bit more of a window to kind of settle. And grass is a lovely aid. So I wouldn't necessarily see it as a negative, more for a lot for taste, texture, support, and also in enjoyment. Dogs love it. So I would definitely have a look at if there's particular grasses or a particular maybe time of day. One thing to definitely rule out is there's definitely no sign of nausea or, your pooch feeling a little bit under the weather, because that's something we'd want to rule out. And again, just keep an eye on the poop, what comes out, because we just want to make sure there is no need for that grass. But from a nutritional side, Butternut has you covered. It could be worth diving into just making sure we're getting the absolute perfect fit in terms of digestion and that kind of swap over, although you are super established. So lots of reasons, from taste, enjoyment, nutritional changes again as they do get a little bit older. But I would take a little bit of a breath that certainly everything is covered in terms of butternut. There's a lovely fiber content, moisture content. So it could be for a number of quite normal reasons. But again, happy to dive into it, kind of pull it apart a bit more on a personal level, and chat about it. There is the case as well about dogs wanting to eat it because they want to make themselves sick. And it's a lovely aid for just getting that regurgitation going. But as long as he's not being sick, it's probably more of a either positive or additive for fibre and things. So please do catch up if it does help, and hopefully a little insight there.
Brilliant, thanks, Anna. A few people have mentioned about the dog first aid kits. I've just had a little quick search there whilst Anna was answering that question, and there's lots and lots out there. I know Halfords have got them, different pet shops have got them. There's one called Mountain Paws. Yeah, really great. You know, there is ones already out there that you can buy. If you are wanting to make up your own, you know, have a little look on there as well to see what's included, as an idea to build your own, I suppose. So there's lots of things out there. Just pop it into Google. There is lots of different ones. So yeah, do have a little look. But I would say most importantly, you want things like your gauzes, maybe some saline so you can wash out if there's any wounds, tick removers, tape, bandages, yeah, just those kinds of things. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but there's probably lots more. Tweezers, that's probably a good one as well. There's probably lots more out there. So yeah, do have a little search. And yeah, if you are wanting it wrote down for you, just send us an email at the end and we can give you an idea of what to pop in there. Brilliant. So I think unfortunately that is all we do have time for today. We hope you found our session useful and have learnt something new along the way. If we did not get around to answering your questions, because I can see there is still lots in there that we haven't had a chance to answer, then please do send them to our email. I'll just pop that up on the screen actually. Yeah, feel free to email us with any questions you have got. So our email is vetnurses@butternutbox.com, and we'll be sure to reply back to you with an answer. We also have a Butternut page on Facebook called For the Love of Dogs, so be sure to join the page and join our community on there. Don't forget, as I mentioned as well, you do have access to free vet nurse appointments that would be with one of us sat here today, and we can give more personalised advice. So whether that comes down to weight, portions, fussy eating, digestion queries, skin and coat queries, allergies, you know, we are here to help. So do feel free to pop in an appointment, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you've got. We have popped the number on there as well for the emergency vet nurse helpline at the bottom of the page. So there's a UK one and an Ireland number as well. So hopefully you won't need it, but these guys are 24/7. They're a little bit like the NHS 111. So if you know, it is worth saving into your phone in case of any sort of emergencies, and you do sort of need any advice, especially if it is sort of out of hours too. But yeah, we hope you've had a great session, and from myself, Anna, Leah and Lucy, we'd like to say a huge thank you for you all joining us today, but we hope you all have a really great afternoon. Take care, everyone.